All right, today we're pulling back the curtain and getting an inside look at the quality playbook airlines use to get you from that ticket purchase all the way to a safe landing. We're going to go deep inside the system, looking at the exact processes that you, as future aviation managers and cabin crew, will need to master to make sure every single flight is a success.
So, let's just start with a question we can all get our heads around. You go online, you find a flight, you click buy. Simple enough, right? But what happens in between that click and you arriving safely at your destination? What's the invisible machinery that makes sure the meal you asked for is actually on board, that the cabin is safe, and that the flight, well, actually takes off and lands on time? I'll tell you this much, it's not magic. It's a very, very structured process.
And the industry term for this whole playbook is product realization. Now, the best way to think of it is like the master recipe for an airline. It covers everything from planning a brand new route to tracking every single nut and bolt on the plane. For anyone working in aviation, understanding this isn't just a good idea, it's completely non-negotiable. It's the very backbone of the whole operation.
So, where does this all start? Well, way before any plane even thinks about pushing back from the gate, the first and most critical phase is planning. This is where the airline sits down and defines the promise of quality it's making, not just to every passenger, but to the regulators who are watching over them too. That promise really breaks down into three different parts. First up, you've got the specified requirements. This is the stuff the customer explicitly tells you they want, like, I need a vegetarian meal, or I booked a direct flight. Pretty straightforward. Then you have the really crucial unstated requirements. You don't call up the airline to ask for a clean cabin or safe pressurization. You just expect it. It has to be there. And finally, you have the regulatory requirements. These are the absolute non-negotiables set by agencies like the FAA. It's things like how emergency exits work or when the seatbelt sign has to be on.
And this quote from an actual quality manual really just says it all. For an airline, meeting all these requirements isn't just a nice thing to do, it is the business. It's the bedrock of safety and trust.
Okay, so the airline gets all the requirements. They know what they need to do. But how do they actually turn that knowledge into a real, tangible service? That brings us to our next big step, designing the service itself. We're talking about anything from a new in-flight meal service to a totally new, more efficient way of boarding the plane.
Now, designing a new service isn't just some creative brainstorming session in a conference room, it's a super disciplined process. It all starts with step one. You have to plan out the exact stages of development. Then you figure out all the necessary inputs, what information, what materials, what people do we need to make this happen. And maybe most importantly, step three, you define exactly who has the authority to sign off on each stage. This makes sure there's control and consistency right from the get-go.
All right, so you've planned it, you've designed it, but how do you actually know if it works? This next stage is all about quality checks, and there are two very different but equally important ways to check your work. This is a concept that anyone in airline operations has to know inside and out.
So let's really break down the difference between verification and validation, because it's huge. Verification basically asks, did we follow our own plan? For instance, the plan said to load 150 meals. So simply counting the catering carts to confirm, yep, 150 meals are on board, that's verification. But validation asks a much bigger question. Did we make the right thing? Did we build something the customer actually needs or wants? We might have loaded the correct number of meals, but we need a trial run to validate that passengers actually like the food and that the crew can realistically serve it during the flight. You absolutely need both.
Okay, so once the service is actually out there and running, the playbook kind of shifts its focus. Now, two things become absolutely critical: being able to track every single item that goes onto that plane, and being able to trust the tools you use to measure quality.
And that brings us to traceability. In aviation, this is literally a life or death concept. It's the ability to track any component, from a massive engine blade down to a single life vest, all the way back to its origin. Think about it. If a life vest from a certain manufacturing batch is found to be faulty, traceability lets the airline instantly identify and pull every single other vest from that same batch, no matter where it is in their global fleet.
And this whole idea is going super high-tech. The future is what they're calling a digital product passport, often built on secure tech like blockchain. Imagine an unchangeable, permanent digital record for every single part. It documents its entire life story, from the raw materials it was made from to every repair it's ever had. It provides total transparency and makes it almost impossible for dangerous counterfeit parts to sneak into the system.
So,
Along with tracking parts, you have to be able to trust your tools. Any device that's used for a safety or quality check, like a digital thermometer checking meal temperatures or the pressure gauge on an oxygen bottle, it must be calibrated. Calibration just means it's constantly checked for accuracy against a known, verified standard. It's the only way you can be sure that when a gauge reads full or a thermometer says safe, that you can actually trust it, no questions asked.
So, we've gone through the process, the planning, the technology, but let's talk about the single most important part of this whole equation, the people. The people who make this system work. And yeah, this is where you come in. Just take a look at this. A modern airplane isn't built in one factory. It is a massive, incredibly complex assembly of parts from all over the world. The engines might come from one country, the wings from another, the electronics from somewhere else entirely. What that means is that quality and safety aren't just one person's job or one company's job. They're a shared responsibility that stretches across thousands of people all over the globe.
And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. This entire system we've been talking about, product realization, from figuring out requirements to designing services and ensuring traceability, this is the absolute backbone of the entire airline industry. It is the engine that drives safety, that guarantees you're complying with regulations, and most importantly, it's what builds and maintains the trust of every single passenger who steps on board.
So we're going to end with a final question, one for you to really think about. As you get ready to start your career in this industry, whether you're in management making huge decisions about suppliers, or you're part of the cabin crew responsible for that immediate in-flight safety and service, you won't just be doing a job. You're going to be a guardian of this entire system. So the question is, how will you uphold this promise of quality?